So today we are going to understand the cuneiform bones. So you can see these are the three cuneiform bones: the medial cuneiform, the intermediate cuneiform, the lateral cuneiform. So what are the common features of this? Mainly there are three cuneiform bones as we discussed just now. The medial cuneiform is the largest and the intermediate cuneiform is intermediate one is the smallest. So medial one is the largest, intermediate one is the smallest. So according to the name, they are like wedge shaped structures. Cuneiform means wedge shaped structures. So if you observe the medial cuneiform, the edge of the wedge forms dorsal surface. It's actually edge. Uh, Actually, this cuneiform bones have the base and the edge. If you see, this is the edge of the medial cuneiform, but whereas intermediate and lateral cuneiform, these are the bases of their cuneiform. If you see on the plantar surface, you will find the edges of both intermediate and lateral cuneiform, but the base of medial cuneiform will be on the plantar surface. So actually now we are seeing this is a dorsal surface or superior surface, right? So here medial cuneiform you will see the edge, whereas you will see the bases of both intermediate and lateral cuneiform bones, right? So that is the difference, main difference you need to understand about the edge and base of the cuneiform bones, right? And next, coming to the, actually these are also called wedge. These are wedge shape, so we'll say edge of wedge or base of wedge, right? Don't confuse for that. Now coming to anterior parts of medial and lateral cuneiform project forward than intermediate cuneiform. Yeah, you see the anterior parts both are, this medial and lateral cuneiform are more forward when compared with this intermediate cuneiform, right? And this forms a deep breccia for base of second metatarsal bone. So as these two edges are raised, this in middle there is a deep recess, especially for second metatarsal bone, right? Now we'll discuss in detail about medial cuneiform by seeing the bone in detail. So if you see here, this is actually the medial cuneiform, the posterior lateral view. So how to side determine it, like whether it's of right side or left side? So let us understand. Mainly the thin edge forms the dorsal surface, of course, because for the medial cuneiform, the edge is forming the dorsal or superior surface, whereas the base is forming the posterior surface, right? So the edge forms the anterior surface or dorsal surface. So the proximal and distal surfaces. So proximal surface, distal surface, you can see here the proximal surface and distal surface are fully articular. The distal surface is larger than the proximal one, and the distal one bears a large kidney shaped facet for the base of first metacarpal. So you can see for the first metacarpal bone, the medial cuneiform forms a facet, right? And also there will be another facet which is directed proximally for the navicular bone, right? So these are the side determination points. Next, coming to the features. So for the features, you can see this diagram. The dorsal surface is from the rough edge of the wedge. This is edge, right? And the plantar surface is from the base of the wedge, right? Opposite. Next, coming to distal surface, it is having a large kidney shaped facet for the base of first metacarpal here, okay? For the base of first metatarsal bone with its hilum directed laterally, and the proximal surface is piriform facet for the navicular bone, and the medial surface is rough and subcutaneous. This is the medial surface which is rough and subcutaneous, okay? Lateral surface, it will be backside. It is marked by inverted L-shaped facet along posterior superior margin, mainly for intermediate cuneiform. To articulate with intermediate cuneiform, here you will find the lateral surface. Okay, so this is the medial surface, this is the lateral surface, this is the anterior surface, this is the posterior surface, and this is the present on dorsal or superficial side. The lower or palmar's plantar side will be back side, okay? So next, coming to the lateral surface by inverted L-shaped facet of intermediate cuneiform bone articulation. Next, coming to anterior superior part of facet is separated by vertical ridge, and this part is for base of second metatarsal bone here. This is for base of second metatarsal bone. The anterior inferior part of lateral surface is roughened. So here, anterior inferior part here is roughened. Now coming to attachments, the great part of tibialis anterior is inserted into impression on anterior inferior angle. So here you can see this is the anterior inferior angle. So here there is insertion of tibialis anterior, okay, into impression on anterior inferior angle of the medial surface, right? On the plantar surface, that is on the back side, there is a slip from tibialis posterior. So according to the name here, as in the anterior side, so a tibialis anterior, on the plantar surface, tibialis posterior. Next, there is a part of peroneus longus inserted into rough anterior inferior part of lateral surface. So this is lateral surface. So here there will be attachment of also the peroneus longus, right? Tibialis anterior, peroneus longus will be attached here, whereas on plantar surface there is attachment of tibialis posterior. So this is about medial cuneiform. So just remember, medial cuneiform proximally attaches to navicular bone and distally attached to first metatarsal. On anterior lateral side it also attached to second metatarsal, and medially it is not having any articular surface, whereas laterally it will attach to the intermediate cuneiform bone, right? Now coming to intermediate cuneiform, its dorsal surface is formed by base, right? This is the base, whereas its plantar surface is by edge, right? So its medial surface bears, this is the medial surface, bears inverted L-shaped, for intermediate cuneiform, medial side will be this one, lateral side will be this one, right? So medial side it bears an inverted L-shaped facet for posterior along its posterior superior margin for articulation with facet on medial cuneiform. So this both articulate over here. Next, additional features of intermediate cuneiform: the proximal and distal surfaces bear triangular articular faces, right? Proximally to attach with navicular bone, distally to attach with, of course, the second metatarsal bone, right? And the lateral surface is marked by vertical facet along its posterior margin, and this is for attachment to lateral cuneiform. So here it has only vertical facet, here it has triangle inverted L-shaped facet, and here upper and lower side it has a triangular facet, right? And next, coming to plantar surface, that is opposite to this surface on lower side, it is forming edge of wedge, right? So what are the attachments of intermediate cuneiform? On the plantar surface it is a slip from tibialis posterior, so that's it, only tibialis posterior on plantar surface, whereas for the medial cuneiform on plantar surface you have tibialis posterior, and on anterior surface or dorsal surface you have, especially on this angle, anterior inferior angle, on the lateral side you have attachment of tibialis anterior, and also there is attachment of peroneus longus, right? So three attachments in the case of medial cuneiform. On the anterior side you have tibialis anterior, peroneus longus; posterior side tibialis posterior. For the intermediate cuneiform, on the plantar side or posterior side only tibialis posterior. Now coming to lateral cuneiform, you can see here this is lateral cuneiform, and its side determination points are dorsal surface is formed by base, same like this, right? So here the base, whereas the distal surface or on back side is covered by triangular articular facet for, on distal side here, triangular facet for third metatarsal bone, right? And the medial surface, this one, is marked by triangular articular facet for third metacarpal. That is the medial surface is marked by posterior margin vertical strip directed in middle for articulation with intermediate cuneiform bone. Along anterior margin of surface there is narrow strip often divided into two small facets, and these are for the base of second metatarsal and also for the third metatarsal. So you can see here the anterior side has two facets for second and third. If you remember, the medial cuneiform also have articulation with second metatarsal, but the intermediate cuneiform only articulates with the second metatarsal distally, right? So next, coming to additional features of lateral cuneiform, the proximal surface means this one, it's rough in its lower one third and has triangular facets in upper two thirds for navicular bone, right? Next, coming to its lateral surface, this one, it is marked posterior superior part by triangular or oval facet, mainly for attachment, insertion of cuboid bone, right here. and at anterior inferior angle there is a small facet may be present for fourth metatarsal anterior inferior part. Here there will be one facet for fourth metatarsal bone also. Okay, so this lateral cuneiform have facets for second metatarsal, third metatarsal, and also fourth metatarsal bone. Next, coming to plantar surface, means the opposite to the surface, it's formed by edge of wedge, right? Because here on the dorsal surface it has base, of course on plantar surface it will have edge of wedge. So what are the attachments? The plantar surface receives slip of tibialis posterior and also gives origin to flexor hallucis brevis. So lateral cuneiform also have tibialis posterior and plantar surface, and also it has the flexor hallucis brevis origin. So about ossification of this cuneiform bones, each cuneiform bone ossify from one center, which appears during first year in especially the lateral cuneiform bone, right? During the second year in medial cuneiform bone, and during third year in intermediate. So 1, 2, 3. So first ossification in lateral cuneiform, next in medial cuneiform, last in intermediate cuneiform, right? So remember, each cuneiform bone have only one center, first year in lateral cuneiform, second year in medial cuneiform, third year in intermediate cuneiform. So this is all about the different points of cuneiform bone, about medial, intermediate, lateral, their side determination, features, attachments, and also ossification. So next we'll start with cuboid bone.